Yeah, it's lovely to see everybody. Thank you for, I don't know if you chose the session or if you were just put in here, put in this room, but it's great to have you. Samira and I are dear colleagues from the United Religions Initiative, which is an international network of peace building organizations around the world and really working on kind of grassroots peace building work. And I know Samira and I also, so we do a lot of work with young people. And so I much prefer things to be interactive and engaging. And I would love to know who you all are and where you're all from. I mean, maybe you could just put in the chat, at least just kind of, yeah, who you are and where you're from. It would be great to know. I see Karen from South Africa. God, lovely to see you. Thank you for coming. And yeah, where do we have, maybe give us a wave if you're from, should we start with North America? Oh, Diana from Mexico. Okay, lovely to have you here. So we've got Mexico, we've got Canada. South Africa, we've got Canada, Christine.
Hello, Christine from Canada. Hello, Diana from Mexico, and hello, Karen from South Africa. And who is missing in the chat box now? Jennifer? Anna's from California. Welcome, Anna from California.
And okay, and Jennifer's maybe finding the chat, but give us, we can, yeah. Jennifer from Canada as well. Okay, so we have a good, a nice mix. And yeah, thank you for being here. It's lovely to have a global gathering. Samira, over to you.
Yeah,
Are you gonna?
So we have been given a task to speak a little bit about our context and where we're coming from, and how does interfaith peace building and engagement in COVID times look like in our specific contexts. Sarah and I have been colleague for a bit less than a year, I think, since I joined the staff of United Religions Initiative, but we have both have 10-year-long experience in peace building and interfaith activism, mostly dedicated to work with young people. But we will try to sort of give you an overview of our perspective on youth, interfaith engagement, peace building in local communities, and in the global sphere, and at the same time tell you something about us as like persons, as individuals, because I think that that's what sticks with people most. So Sarah, would you like to start with the context of South Africa and your work in general?
Yeah, sure. So just to expand a little bit more in terms of what I said at in our big plenary about kind of what this moment is looking like in particular South African context. The response to the virus, I think we were our government responded in a quite quick way in terms of a lockdown and a shutdown of the country, which meant that we didn't see the same kind of intense crisis in our healthcare system as has been seen in other parts of the world. But the biggest challenge in a South African context has really been the economic hit that this lockdown has created. We live in, one of the most unequal societies in the world, South Africa, and what that has meant that is this shutting down the country has had a huge impact on the day-to-day lives of people. And so things like just food distribution, for instance, has been a big response from civil society. But as we know, we can't rely on NGOs and civil society in the long run. It's a great short-term solution of people offering, creating food parcels and doing what they can, but it does cause a lot of issues in the long run. So we're really at a juncture moment of waiting to see how the government respond to the kind of economic crisis that we now see ourselves in as a result of that. Just in my work, I mean, I have the real privilege of working in, you know, a context where people are just passionate about the healing of this world and working together across religious and cultural and social divides. And so whether it's Islamic Relief who are doing work, or the churches who are doing, you know, kind of work of bringing food to people. There was a beautiful article about the Bangladesh community who are bringing food, you know, across all these divides and social differences that normally people might have fear and uncertainty around. Now is a moment where we're really stepping together and working together. And in URI, in the United Religions Initiative across the world, we've seen amazing examples of communities really reaching out and supporting each other. I'd encourage you to go to uri.org/coronavirus, because there are some amazing just stories of hope to see. But I'm sure Samira will add to that, as well as, yeah, just the Bosnian context. What is happening there, Samira?
I love how this seems to be an interview between the two of us.
We're asking each other questions.
Probably conversation at work. So I'm from Bosnia and Herzegovina. I understand if you've never heard of my country, because it's very small. It has only 3.5 million inhabitants at this point. Most of people around the world know about my country because of very violent past that we had. So from 1992 until 1995, Bosnia has been engaged in a war that lasted for 4 years and left huge casualties and huge consequences for the society. I was born in 1994, so I was born by almost at the end of the war, which means that I don't remember particular events, or I cannot say that I've been sort of traumatized in a direct way, but unfortunately my community has been. And even though I have nothing to do with unfortunate circumstances that my family has been through and the entire population of the country has been through, I have to fix something that I didn't break. And this has been the legacy of my generation, and generations that are coming after me, and generations that are a bit older than me. We need to fix something that we absolutely had no saying in. And this has sort of shaped my my engagement and my life when it comes to especially interfaith. I was raised, I was born into a so I'm a practicing Muslim, and I've been very blessed to have a family that helped me embrace religion and spirituality while nurturing my reason. And I've been interested in one part of my life in sociological aspect of religion, and now as an established person, I believe, and as someone who's actively working in this field for 10 years, I'm able to see the incredible impact religion and spirituality and different indigenous traditions actually do have in forming and functioning of a society. Unfortunately, religious leaders and different religious groups don't have their plates clean because of unfortunate involvement, direct involvement of religious communities during the war and during the bloodshed, which is something that is very hard to deal with when we say that religion is something that is innate good and that it teaches us good. Unfortunately, for some people, this means that religion is something that is easy to manipulate, and it's easy to use against other people who might not be as aware of your beliefs as they should or might have been at one point. Another very weird circumstance that I'm coming from is the sort of lack of freedom because of the communist regime that we lived under Tito, who used to govern Yugoslavia, because my country used to be a part of Yugoslavia. So unfortunately, religious identities and religious freedoms have been severely suppressed during this authoritarian regime. And then all of a sudden you had this freedom, and all of a sudden no one knew what the other is thinking and like what's happening in between these two groups. And it was very easy to fire up a conflict. This wasn't a religiously motivated conflict. I just want to be clear on that, but it was religiously fueled at certain points in the conflict. So interfaith has been a great part of what I've been doing for past 10 years as a young activist. And it wasn't a goal. So for me, it was mostly a means to get to the goal. To be in a group with people that have different indigenous traditions and in their lives, or different spiritual or religious expressions, for me is not just enough. If I just know that you are coming from XY group and I didn't bother to actually get to know you and figure out what the core values of your beliefs are, I think that we didn't do a thorough job, and still we do not know one another, and still we need to work on getting to know one another, because if we don't, it's very easy to tell someone that someone on the other side is sort of getting ready to make sure that you don't exist, which is actually what happened in my context. This is why I became involved in Youth for Peace, which is a local youth-led and youth-founded organization, and now that's the local activism, and the global picture is coming from United Religions Initiative, just like Sarah's is. And I work there as the regional coordinator for United Religions Initiative Multiregion, which is one of the sort of administrational units of the entire network. So Interfaith has played a great part. I've been aware that it's absolute necessity for people to speak about interfaith, but at the same time to take interfaith very seriously, because it's not just about people coming together and sharing prayer together. It's much deeper than that. It's a joint understanding, and it's a joint effort to actually push forward a very positive, a different narrative of what people are doing all over the world. Because no matter how many people gather at events such as this one and similar to this one, there's the equal or even bigger number of people that actively decide not to have anything with people who are different. So that's a challenge, and I think that it's up to everyone to figure out ways of how to sort of address this, and how to make sure that we're actively offering peace to everyone, and equality and justice, healing, which is something I believe that we should be all about, pretty much.
Yeah, I think both Samira and I are deeply passionate about pushing people to action.
So we are at our 2-minute warning.
We're at our 2 minutes? That went so quickly. Oh my gosh. Okay.
I just figured that one out.
Yeah. No, there was so much I wanted to say in response to what you said, Samira. Maybe we can just end one of the points that Samira and I wanted to make. Samira, you said, in your context, this idea of young people needing to fix something they didn't break. And in South Africa, with our history of apartheid, young people feel a very similar way, in the sense of how, we have a particular history that we're grappling with at the moment. And it's like, how do we, as young people, address that? And I think at this moment of COVID-19, there's that same question of what the role is of young people. And I know what I've heard a lot of is kind of like, it's your generation's problem now. Like, you're the ones that are going to have to deal with it. And I think it's important that we challenge that, to say that it needs to be an intergenerational conversation, and not just placed as a kind of burden on young people. Not to say that young people don't have the solutions and the answers. I think we definitely do, but it's got to be a kind of joint conversation. Samira, do you want to add to that quickly? And then if there are any questions, we can answer those.
I definitely just want to reinforce that it's much easier to work as a team, whatever we're doing in our respective fields of work and careers and lives in general. It is much easier to do it with someone else who has same or similar or maybe opposite opinions to yours, but it's very important to hear the other perspective. That's the point of dialogue, and the dialogue is the basis of everything. And we're usually very interested in dialogue in between different communities, but what about the dialogue within the same community where the biggest difference between people? I think that intergenerational dialogue is something that we overlook too often, and that we're not, especially young people. I think that this is a critique for us because we don't think that we should be engaged in this sort of dialogue. I think that that's one of the grounds for the work within monolithical communities and then beyond. Is that the bell?
That's the bell.
Yeah.
With your beautiful cat. I love it. So precious.
She's decided to join. I am sorry to interrupt, but it's also an invitation for all of the participants to put in their questions.
Please.
We have 5 minutes of Q&A. While we're waiting for people to put in their questions, I have a question for both of you. As both of you are working as effective bridge makers in communication, what kind of practices do you do, spiritual practices, for fostering and nurturing trust?
That's a really good question. I'm happy Samira, do you want to?
You can go now.
Okay. So for me, in terms of spiritual practices, I think what I would encourage is people to deepen their own spiritual practices, whatever that might be. And what's, in terms of the trust, it's the sharing of those spiritual practices that is where we kind of start to form trust. And so I think about the interfaith youth camps that we do with kids, where on a Friday night the Jewish students are sharing their Shabbat service in front of, you know, all the participants from different cultural backgrounds. And there's something so sacred about, you know, young people taking ownership of a particular religion or tradition and sharing it with others, that just brings that sense of trust. So yeah, I think people often misunderstand interfaith work as like bringing everybody to one faith. But in fact, for me, interfaith work has helped me deepen my own kind of spiritual practice and my own understanding of my religion. So that's just some thoughts on that.
And there's a question from Anna in the chat box, which I'd like to respond to. So what I encourage people to do, especially like people in my local community that I've been talking about, and everyone has been complaining in a very loud way about this disturbing their spiritual practices, what they were used to. What proved very efficient for me is that I didn't allow the coronavirus to intervene and interrupt my individual practice. My individual practice hasn't changed because as a Muslim, I pray 5 times a day. It's soon to be Ramadan, so I'll be praying in the same way and fasting in the same way as if I was able to go to the mosque. I think that it was very important for me personally to stick to my daily routine when it comes to my spirituality, because this gives me a sense of normalcy in this entire chaos. And I didn't allow in a way for this to interrupt my spiritual connection to the divine being in any way. And this is something that I've been talking to people, and some found it very effective, just to act as if this is the moment that we always used to live, and continue with our expression in the way that we used to do. I understand that there's lack of community, which is always a special gift to us as individuals, but uninterrupted spiritual practices that used to happen before the coronavirus have pretty much saved my sanity since the beginning, because I'm in a lockdown for more than a month now. So I'm very pleased that this kept me sane, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to talk to you today.
Yeah, I also found it the way of, it's an opportunity to kind of redesign some of the rituals that our spiritual practices might have, you know, done in the past. For me, Easter was very odd to not be with family and that sort of thing at this time. But in a way, it gave me a chance to design what I wanted to do on that day, and how I wanted to honor, you know, Good Friday and what that symbolizes, and then the Easter day and the difference. And it was a kind of creative redesigning of rituals I found for myself, which was nice.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.